Welcome to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast, your weekly news roundup of hunting, fishing, trapping, and conservation stories from around the Gem State. Hosted by Fish and Game's Public Information Specialist, Connor J. Lease.
And welcome back to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast. This week we're talking about a mule deer shot and left to waste in Unit 66, some invasive grass suppression in the Magic Valley region, and yes, yet another state record lake trout coming out of Payette Lake. But first, one of the coolest stories you're going to hear all year. A legally blind Kendrick hunter gets back into the field to hunt thanks to innovations in hunting technology. For Tom Perigo of Kendrick, Idaho, the moment he had spent weeks preparing for had finally arrived. The rifle was ready, and Luke Austin was watching the live image from his scope. Perigo has only 1-2% of his vision remaining because of retinitis pigmentosa, so returning to rifle hunting meant finding a way to bridge the gap between what he could see and what was happening downrange. That bridge was built with technology and some trust. Austin, a retired Army drill sergeant from Deary, Idaho, became Perigo's partner in this effort. Together, they spent weeks at the range learning how to make the system work under pressure. A trigger cam mounted to Perigo's rifle scope transmitted a live image to a tablet, allowing Austin to see what the scope was seeing and communicate adjustments to Perigo. The equipment was only the beginning. They practiced shooting positions, rifle adjustments, and the precise language they would use out in the field. Austin learned how to describe what he was seeing, while Perigo learned to make small corrections based on Austin's instructions. Over time, the commands became familiar, and so did the trust. Then came the steel target. Perigo settled behind the rifle as Austin watched the image from the scope and talked him through the final adjustment. Perigo squeezed the trigger. The sound carried across the range, followed by a smile from Perigo. It was only a steel target, but it confirmed that the system could work. Now, they had to take it out hunting. Before Perigo could head into the field, hunting with the modified equipment required a reasonable modification for special weapons seasons, which meant picking up an application at an Idaho Fish and Game regional office and obtaining a doctor's certification documenting his qualifying condition. Perigo also had to complete Idaho's mandatory bear identification exam. Fish and Game Officer George Fisher helped him through the process, working with Perigo to make the identification portion accessible despite his limited vision. With the paperwork completed and the exam behind him, Perigo was ready to put weeks of preparation to the test. The opportunity came in a canyon where Perigo and Austin settled in and began watching for a bear. After sitting for a short while, a mature sow slowly walked into view. Austin watched the live feed from the trigger cam as Perigo settled into position. With only a few minor adjustments, they worked through the system they had practiced countless times at the range. Then, Austin gave Perigo the words he had been waiting to hear. The crosshairs are on the bear. Perigo pulled the trigger. The sow went down quickly, traveling only a short distance before expiring. Later, Perigo described the experience as unlike anything he had felt before. Quote, "It was the weirdest feeling that I've ever had," he said. Quote, "You're sitting there pulling the trigger on a gun, and you're hoping whoever's directing you directed you right, and things come together." Well, needless to say, they did. Following the hunt, Perigo had another important part of the process to complete. Successful hunters who harvest a black bear, mountain lion, or gray wolf must report the harvest within 10 days. Hunters must present the skull and a portion of the hide with evidence of sex naturally attached to an Idaho Fish and Game regional office or a conservation officer, and then complete the required big game mortality report. Unsuccessful hunters are not required to report. Perigo checked in the bear and then processed the meat, portioning it for the freezer and making the most of what the hunt provided. For Perigo, the harvest represented more than just filling a tag. Retinitis pigmentosa had changed how he experienced the outdoors, but it had not taken away his desire to hunt. With Austin beside him and with support from others along the way, he had found a way back into the field, not by overcoming his vision loss, but by building a new way to hunt around it. Now the two are looking towards elk season. A bull would be the dream, but a cow would be a good place to start, they say. The challenge will be greater, with a larger herd animal and a system that will have to adapt. But they already know how to practice, communicate, and trust each other when the moment arrives. For most hunters, seeing the target is just the first step. For Perigo, getting back into the field required technology, preparation, patience, and people willing to help him see what he could not. In the canyon that day, Austin saw the bear through the scope, and Perigo heard the words, "The crosshairs are on the bear," and he took it from there. Incredible story. Congratulations and shout out to you, Tom Perigo. You're an inspiration, man. To see photos from their hunt and to read the story for yourself, hit the link in the show notes to check out Jen Bruns' article on our website. But old JB ain't done. Oh no. Coming out of the Clearwater region, here's a story she wrote highlighting a very cool conservation project going down in the Seven Devil Mountains. Held annually in mid-July, the Seven Devils Butterfly Count takes participants from the Salmon River to Heaven's Gate Lookout, covering a dramatic range of elevations, habitats, and landscapes along the way. Idaho Fish and Game staff joined volunteers from the McCall Master Naturalist chapter for the annual survey searching meadows, forests, roadsides, and other habitats for butterflies. The count is part of the North American Butterfly Association's long-running Butterfly Count program, which has collected standardized observations across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Within designated 15-mile diameter count circles, volunteers spend a day identifying butterfly species and recording how many they see. That information becomes more valuable when the count is repeated year after year. The observations help scientists track which species are present, monitor changes in abundance and distribution, and better understand how factors such as habitat, weather, and other environmental changes may affect butterfly populations. For the McCall Master Naturalist volunteers, the Seven Devils Count is a chance to put their knowledge to work in the field while contributing to a much larger conservation effort. From the river bottoms of the Salmon River to the high country around Heaven's Gate, every butterfly adds another piece of data to help track changes in butterfly communities, better understand habitat conditions, and support conservation efforts. To learn more, hit the link in the show notes to read Jen Bruns' press release. And if joining the Idaho Master Naturalist sounds like something you've always wanted to do, head on over to our Idaho Master Naturalist page on our website. I'll make sure to include a link to that page as well next to a little butterfly emoji or something. Now, for all you anglers out there, I don't know how you're ever going to be able to top this year's insane list of fishing records. It's got to be close to a dozen or so that I alone have written about, and I'm sure my colleague Martin Koenig's reported on a few as well. But this summer just keeps getting crazier. Poor Dylan Smith, man. Just 2 months after catching Idaho's biggest catch and release record lake trout on May 2nd, another angler steps up to the plate and catches an even bigger laker. And you guessed it, it came from Payette Lake. By now, if you follow Idaho Fish and Game's stringer of record fish stories, you're well aware that there's one lake that comes to mind when you mention the words lake trout, Payette Lake. But if not, allow me to bring you up to speed. Lake trout, also known as Mackinaw, were introduced into Payette Lake in 1955. These long-lived predators can survive for more than 40 years, grow beyond 40 inches in length, and exceed 50 pounds. As the stocked fish matured, the trophy fishery gained popularity. During the 1990s, it wasn't uncommon for anglers to catch multiple lake trout over 15 pounds and occasionally fish exceeding 30 pounds in a single day. By the early 2000s, lake trout abundance had increased dramatically, but there was a trade-off. Overabundance of lake trout meant fewer food resources, leading to thin and undernourished lake trout that reached decent lengths but still more closely resembled eels than trophy freshwater fish. This also meant big declines in the kokanee population, the lake trout's main diet. By 2014, fisheries managers recognized that action was needed. They began reducing the number of smaller lake trout to lessen predation on kokanee, but released trophy-sized fish. This increased kokanee survival and made more food available for the remaining trophy lake trout. And the results paid off. Since 2018, staff have removed approximately 3,100 lake trout from Payette Lake, averaging roughly 445 fish per year. The condition of lake trout has also recovered, with Payette Lake producing 5 catch-and-release state records since 2016. Actually, make that 6. Normally, we're lucky to highlight 1 record fish per fishery per year. But again, if you've been following the Fish and Game newswire this summer, you might recall seeing Payette Lake in the headlines already this summer. Dylan Smith, the lucky Idaho Falls angler who caught a 43.25-inch laker back on May 2nd, barely had time to show off his crown to his friends. Pencils have erasers, thank goodness, because on July 8th of this year, Kim Anderson pulled out a 44-inch lake trout from none other than Payette Lake, earning himself the new state catch and release record. Anderson's fish is now the 3rd record in the last 2 years. Congratulations on your new state record, Kim. Well deserved, partner. That's all I got for top stories. Let's hit the rapid fire bulletin. Idaho Fish and Game conservation officers are asking for the public's help in solving a case involving 2 mule deer does that were shot and left to waste in the Fall Creek drainage of Game Management Unit 66. The animals were discovered lying just off the shoulder of the road, approximately 2 miles up the Fall Creek drainage. Both does had been shot in the head with a small caliber firearm and left at the scene a short distance apart. Fish and Game was notified of the incident through the CAP hotline on August 19th. Based on information gathered so far, officers do not believe these deer were involved in a vehicle collision and that the shooting likely occurred on August 16th or 17th. Those looking to recreate in the South Hills, Soldier, and Smoky Mountains in September may see a low-flying helicopter spraying pre-emergent herbicide on the hillsides in Units 43, 44, 48, and 54 to control the spread of invasive annual grasses such as cheatgrass. The best way to combat invasive annual grasses is with a pre-emergent herbicide. Most seeds dropped by these grasses germinate in the fall, following the first moisture, making timing critical. The spraying project is scheduled to begin the week of September 1st and continue through September 12th. Treatments will be conducted on a day or days where wind and weather conditions meet the required parameters for spraying treatments to occur. To learn more about this project, please contact the Magic Valley Regional Office at 208-324-4359. That's all the news we have for this week. Thanks for putting an ear to Idaho Fish and Game's Hook and Bulletin. If there's something on your mind, or if you got a question related to fish and game matters, feel free to drop us a line at podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Again, that's podcast@idfg.idaho.gov. Thanks for listening, folks. We'll catch you next week.